What an amazing, powerful human moment we got yesterday at the White House. 24 hours after the President of the United States signs the Gaza-Israel peace deal, he's back at the White House, and he is honoring the late Charlie Kirk on his 32nd birthday with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And if you missed any of this yesterday, oh my goodness, please at some point today, do yourself a favor, go back, pull it up on YouTube. It is just a tremendous event to watch from start to finish. Here was the President of the United States. And if you're someone who gets emotional easily, just know going into it, you're going to feel it on this one.
He was assassinated in the prime of his life for boldly speaking the truth, for living his faith and relentlessly fighting for a better and stronger America. He loved this country. And that's why this afternoon it's my privilege to posthumously award Charles James Kirk, our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that Trump struggles with that word like I do, posthumously. It was funny. We wrapped up the show with it yesterday, and then I hear the president mention it as well in his speech, and I'm thinking to myself, it's okay, my man. I struggle with that one too, okay? I literally ended the show saying I can't stand that word because I just can't get it to roll off the tongue properly. But on a serious note, Erika Kirk was back in front of the world for the first time on this kind of a stage since Charlie Kirk's memorial service a couple of Sundays back. And she continues, there's no doubt in my mind, to make Charlie incredibly proud. And what's important to do at moments like this and in situations like this is not talk about how great of a political activist Charlie was. And I believe he was the most important political activist of the last 50 years in this country, left or right. Not politician, political activist of the last 50 years on either side of the political aisle. But it's to also acknowledge what was taken away from a wife, from two young children, and from Charlie Kirk's parents, who were both there yesterday at the White House as he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And if we're ever going to get to a place where we just don't willy-nilly talk about political violence and talk about our political opponents like, if they end up 6 feet under, so be it. Probably going to be better off. If we're ever going to get to that place, then humanizing political opponents is where it all has to begin. And Erika Kirk did a tremendous job of that yesterday when she was talking about her 3-year-old daughter, her 16-month-old son, and what her daughter in particular wanted to share with her father on his 32nd birthday as he is right now up in heaven.
And before I close, I'll share with you that I asked our daughter what she would like to say to Daddy for his birthday. Excuse me. She said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal. I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream, and I want you to go have a birthday surprise. I love you," is what she said. And while our son is precious, he can't yet speak, in classic Kirk family fashion, his actions spoke louder than his words, and his gift to you, Charlie, and myself for that matter, was deciding to become the man of the house and be fully potty trained at 16 months.
Well, besides needing Erika Kirk's potty training tips, that's damn impressive. 16 months old, the kid's potty trained. My youngest is 19 months, and it hasn't even crossed our minds right now. But maybe that's because she's number 3. That's how it goes. But to hear her share those incredibly emotional moments a letter from her 3-year-old to her father, who is dead, because of a political lunatic who was motivated by far-left ideology, is exactly where we need to take the conversation and remove that level of hatred from the conversation. Stop viewing our political opponents on the left and the right as some type of evildoer who is out to get us all. Enough with the Hitler analogies, enough with the comparisons, enough with the fascist nonsense that is still, even in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, been something that has been used by the left. You see this guy in Virginia who's running for attorney general. I know his text messages go back a few years, but you're having a tough time getting people to condemn it or even comment on it. Never mind asking for him to drop out of the race. That ain't happening, despite wishing death on one of his former political foes. That's the world we find ourselves in. And it's sad, it's sick, it's gross. I mean, I tell you guys stories about what I deal with all the time in Kansas City. And I was at the Chiefs game the other night. What did I tell you on Monday? Saw the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas. He comes on the show every Thursday morning. We disagree all the time. We bumped into each other. We had a very pleasant 15-minute conversation because guess what? He's a young dad. I'm a young dad. We have more in common away from the political scene and the political arena than we don't at this point in our lives. Understanding that about the people that we disagree with is important. Humanizing them is important. Last Thursday, I'm at Prairie Village doing the emceeing deal for their city council races. Mike Kelly, Johnson County chairman, came up, spoke to me for a couple of minutes, had a very pleasant 5-minute conversation. Disagree with a lot of what Mike Kelly's doing, but once again, young dad, nice enough guy, disagree with him politically, he's still a human being. We need both sides of the political aisle to do that. And that was, to me, the reminder from yesterday on what Charlie Kirk being awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom is really about and should be about. Because if not, it's just an event that's forgotten by lunchtime today. If there's something that extends beyond Charlie Kirk's life, and we know all of his political activism will, Turning Point USA is not going anywhere. But the things that you can't actually track, those things that you can't put a number on, like Turning Point USA chapters, is just how people treat each other and how you call out some of what's happening on your own side in the political aisle and the political arena. And that's, unfortunately, the disturbing situation that we find ourselves in when it comes to some of these things that have happened in America over the last few weeks, whether it's Minneapolis, whether it's Charlie Kirk, whether it's what happened at the ICE facility in Dallas. You have people motivated by radical ideology too oftentimes on the left side of the aisle. And you need people's own side to call it out. And coming up, we'll get to this because I know this is a hot story right now. You may have seen it. But there was a big piece that dropped in Politico yesterday. A bunch of people involved with young Republicans, clubs and organizations around the country, including one here in the Kansas City area, under a lot of heat based on text messages that they were sharing with each other on this app Telegram. And we'll tell you what the details are. It's not pretty, but it's also not difficult to condemn. And we have those details next on KCMO 95.7 FM.
From Overland Park to Parkville, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, it's the lead story this morning in the Kansas City Star. Kansas Young Republicans disbanded after leak of hateful racist messages. This stems back to an investigation done by Politico that went through 2,900 pages of messages in a Telegram group. Now, I'd heard of Telegram, but I guess it's one of these online app messaging operations where, you think that you are not able to be tracked. Obviously, that is not the case. But you had young Republicans from various states around the country, including a couple of folks involved with the Kansas Young Republicans, who were sending pretty hateful, disgusting, disturbing, and gross messages. So part of the story here involves two top Kansas members, part of the group. And by the way, they're never going to work in Kansas politics again. As far as I'm concerned, they should not come anywhere near the political arena ever again. They're embarrassments to the Kansas GOP. They're embarrassments to the Republican Party nationwide. And they don't come close to representing any of the values of either the Kansas Republican Party or the national GOP, for that matter. They're totally out of touch with what Donald Trump's America First movement is at its very core, and that is uplifting all Americans. So here's part of the story. Two top Kansas members were part of this online group chat on Telegram between young GOP members in 4 different states, including Kansas. Vice Chair William Hendricks, who worked as a spokesperson for Attorney General Chris Kobach before being fired last Thursday, used the N-word more than a dozen times in messages over the course of 7 months. And no, not the word nuclear that Trump sometimes refers to as the N-word. The other one. Chair Alex Dwyer was also in the group. He reportedly reacted to the message, "Great, I love Hitler," with a smiley face and a heart reaction to a message about killing political opponents in a gas chamber. So I don't know these two guys. I personally have heard their names, and that's about it. They have no real juice. They have nothing whatsoever of substance when it comes to impacting policy or anything of note in the political arena in this state. That much I do know. But there's always these groups that are, all over the place, whether it's a statewide group, a countywide group. I can't keep track of most of the groups. I have people reaching out saying, hey, can you do this for this group? Can you do this for that group? I mean, what are you willing to do? Can you come here? Can you come there? And, I'm happy to do it when I can. I have put a price on these things to basically protect my own time with my own family, but I'm happy to do them. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of these groups out there. And the long and short of this story is the text messages come out in this Politico piece yesterday, and these guys get denounced. One of them gets fired by Kobach. The Kansas GOP disbanded the Young Republicans organization. That's exactly how you act swiftly and effectively, and you say, you know what? There's no sympathy for any of that here. There's no yeah buts. They're done. They're finished. They're fired. And they will no longer have a presence in this state in any meaningful way. And that's it. And you move on. See, it's not hard. It's not hard, Dems. Really not. You got a guy running for AG in Virginia who is wishing death on his political foes, and he's still on the ballot and no one denounces him. I'm not doing the either or thing here right now, but I will just note that there is a guy in Virginia, as you may know, maybe you don't know, maybe you've been out of the news cycle the last couple of weeks. That's fine. That's what we're here to catch you up on KCMO. Guy running for AG in Virginia who had text messages talking about the death of then Speaker of the House in Virginia and his wife and kids. And no one can even denounce it or say that he's not capable of being the next Attorney General. The guy's on a ballot. These two knuckleheads weren't known outside of the diehard Kansas GOP political bubbles. They could walk down the street right now in Overland Park and nobody would have a clue who they were. And they had a fraction of the political power that they probably thought they had in their own minds. That's it. There's nothing there. These are nobodies, to be very clear. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be dealt with on whatever that looks like locally, and they have been here in Kansas, and good on the GOP for that. Good on people denouncing any relationship they had with these two guys and getting ahead of this. That's the right thing to do. But it can't just cut one way. It's got to cut both ways. This is not difficult. We just got done talking about Erika Kirk and her speech at the White House yesterday and how you've got to be able to humanize your opponents even when you vehemently disagree with everything they're saying and their vision for America. They're still human beings. Yes, they're misguided, but they also are children of God, and they deserve to be treated as such, and that's what Charlie Kirk did. That's what he represented. He was not the monster that people made him out to be on social media. I know for many of us, we've watched hours upon hours upon hours of Charlie debating people, and it was respectful. It was largely polite. It wasn't hyper-emotional. It was fact-based, at least on his end it was. And that's what we need more of right now. Not these knuckle-dragger losers going into Telegram chats saying God knows what about Hitler and the N-word and things like that. And you know what? They're getting the boot. That's what they deserve. That's where they belong, out on the streets. Figuratively speaking, of course. I'm sure they'll have a roof over their heads. But this will get a lot of attention locally. The Kansas City Star has this as its top story this morning because, of course, right? Because, of course, this is an easy way to try to change the narrative. But we can't let them do it. I'm not going to let them do it. Not interested in that. Because while we're doing the right thing here, showing these guys the door, I'm still waiting for that on the other side. 913-408-7957 is the text line and the studio line as we get it rolling on a Wednesday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio in Kansas City. Stream us on the iHeart, TuneIn, or KCMO Talk Radio apps as you get your morning started here on 95.7 FM. It's great to have you here. Coming up, we've got this out of one of our local school districts. And it is not good for somebody who wants to be on the school board. And it ties into what we've been talking about so far this morning. We have those details for you coming up next.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Let's go down to Gardner, Edgerton, where somebody who wants to be on the school board has zero business getting there. It will be up to you, the voter in the Gardner, Edgerton School District, as to whether or not this person ends up on the school board after controversy once again struck that school district yesterday. So Keith Davenport is a candidate for the Gardner Edgerton Board of Education. And yesterday he posted on Facebook that he was very upset that the Gardner Edgerton School District Facebook page posted about how yesterday was the first National Day of Remembrance for the late Charlie Kirk. They shared here a resolution passed by the U.S. House of Representatives in September formally designates today, meaning yesterday, as an annual day of reflection in recognition of Kirk's contributions to civic education, faith-based engagement, and youth political awareness. We honor his memory today. That was posted yesterday by the Gardner Edgerton School District. First off, that's part of what the news was yesterday. And on top of that, there's nothing hyper-political about that post. But it got a lot of negative reaction from certain people on the Gardner Edgerton School District Facebook page. So it led this guy, Keith Davenport, to post on his social media yesterday that many have called Charlie Kirk an advocate for free speech. But Kirk often made deeply harmful comments about minority groups. What he truly represented was a narrow political form of religious apologetics, the kind meant to own opponents, not to build understanding. He says faith leaders across traditions have described his ideology as white Christian nationalism, a blend of extreme political conservatism and fundamentalist Christianity so tightly woven together that one can't exist without the other. He goes on the right here, on this National Day of Remembrance, let's remember Charlie Kirk truthfully. Let's recognize why official school posts honoring him might make some families, especially families of color, feel unseen or unsafe. This guy wants to be in charge of your kids in Gardner Edgerton. You are going to be voting in a few weeks on school board candidates and members, and this guy wants to play a role in overseeing what kids do in Gardner Edgerton schools. Keith Davenport. He, him, by the way, in case you were wondering, the dude puts his pronouns on his bio.
Talk about a bombshell.
The least shocking part of the entire story is that he's a pronoun soy boy, John.
He was, fearing about these things that are tightly knit, closely knit together as to be inseparable. Those are called principles. They're not just symbolic gestures.
Yep.
You know?
That's exactly right, man. But this is the kind of stuff that's out there with people running for school board all around Kansas City. He was just foolish enough to post it on social media. And now he's gone viral. Libs of TikTok have picked him up in the whole 9 yards. And, you know, in his photo, he's wearing a Mizzou shirt, which that right there, when you're running for school board in Kansas, probably shouldn't rock the Mizzou shirt. Okay? I mean, that's like politics 101 here. Maybe you don't want to pick KU or K-State, but going Mizzou ain't the answer, brother. All right? That's not really the play here on what you want to be doing when it comes to trying to ingratiate yourself to a community in Kansas. I know what I'll do. I'll wear the Mizzou shirt. Great idea, buddy. Great idea. Fantastic work all around, said nobody ever. But just know that these are the people who want to be in charge of your children's education. And Gardner Edgerton, man, they got some weird stuff going on down there. Between canceling our high school football broadcast at the 11th hour last week, you know, you had the controversy with a teacher who wanted to wear the Charlie Kirk Freedom shirt at one of the schools, and the principal said no, and that became a big deal, despite allowing other politically motivated shirts on the other side. Now you've got this wackiness with a school board candidate denouncing the school for posting about Charlie Kirk's National Day of Remembrance. That's some weird stuff down there. Really weird stuff going on.
Didn't used to be that way.
I know. But that's what you would never think that of all places, Gardner or Edgerton would be filled with these whack jobs. But it is.
I think Paola City Council is starting to gather up funds to build a wall. If I were them in Miami County, it's like, stop.
Oh, boy. On the text line, Pete, cut the guy some slack. The Mizzou shirt's at the thrift shop. It's the only thing worth wearing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You want to play that game? We're going to get ourselves in some trouble here on KCMO. Save that for the sports guys. All right? Leave us out of it. But yesterday was a really busy day. I mean, Trump comes back from his overseas trip. He's got the Medal of Freedom for Charlie Kirk, and you had just a lot of news as well. And there was a lot of great media moments yesterday, too. And this one really was outstanding. Of all places, The View had a tremendous show yesterday. And you had RFK's wife, Cheryl Hines, going on The View. And I thought she did a tremendous job putting these people in their place and supporting what her husband's mission is all about. And that is asking questions, not taking big pharma at its word, but actually trying to follow the science. Yes, you heard that right. Follow the science, not blindly, but asking questions about the science, wondering if the science is the best science. All these things that people who are curious should be doing, no matter what. And that was part of RFK's wife's message, Cheryl Hines, yesterday when she got on The View.
It has also spread a lot of misinformation, a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, and I think it's just a very dangerous thing. I say it with the utmost respect.
Some of it's good and some of it's not. That's the point.
Listen, we all have different views here.
Yes.
And when you say, misinformation, disinformation, we could go back to COVID when...
He's connecting circumcision to autism.
May I finish?
Please.
When Fauci were saying when you get the vaccine, you cannot transmit COVID. It will stop COVID. And that was disinformation, misinformation.
We were also still learning about it. It was a novel virus we've never encountered before.
Right.
Because now the doctors will acknowledge that
and Dr. Fauci has a medical degree.
At the time, they were censoring Bobby because Bobby said, where's the science to show us this? And there wasn't any. But people attacked him and said, you're wrong. So it's like, let's take a step back. I know that's your opinion. And
that's a very difficult spot, first off, to be in. When you're sitting there on national TV in front of a couple million people and you're getting attacked by 5 peers. I guess Joy Behar counts as 2, but 6 peers. And you're walking into that lion's den. And you handle it as well as Cheryl Hines, RFK's wife, did yesterday. That's damn impressive. And she's right to point out the hypocrisy of all these people. Well, Fauci's a doctor. Yeah, so is Rex Archer, the former KCMO health director.
Thanksgiving.
Oh!
Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
We're getting towards that time of year. Yeah, so is Jill Biden. That's a good point. Rex Archer, the former Kansas City health director, who said you were better off jumping out of a second-story window during COVID than you were eating dinner indoors at a restaurant. Yeah, that guy was a doctor, too. And I'll tell you what, I got my MD at the School of Hard Knocks, and I'll take it 10 out of 10 times over whatever Rex Archer's medical degree is after hearing him during COVID. I'll tell you that right now. And that's the point that Cheryl Hines was making. Be curious. Ask questions. Don't blindly follow these people, especially when there was very early on a lot of evidence to suggest that, first off, Fauci and some of his acolytes were major hypocrites. Please go protest for old St. George, but don't go see your grandma if she's dying. Kids can't go to school. Of course, we know about, the COVID shot and what it did do and what it didn't do. And they were wrong about that. And there was really no mea culpa to speak of on that front. All of those things that came up time and time again. That opened up a lot of people's eyes the last few years. And now you've got Bobby Kennedy saying, hey, you know what we've got to do? We've got to explore why autism has skyrocketed to 1 in 30 some odd kids. It's a noble thing to do. It's the right thing to do. If you actually care about families and care about young people, you don't poo-poo that. And I'm not saying he's got the best ideas for it. Yeah, sure, he's been a quack on a couple of things. I'm not going to deny that. But you know what? I'd rather somebody be curious and actually go looking for answers than just kind of blindly follow Big Pharma, who has done a lot of good. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of incredible scientific discoveries courtesy of Big Pharma. I'll readily admit that. We can live longer, healthier lives because of Big Pharma. But if there are bad things that are coming out of some of their experiments, bad things coming out of some of their science, then let's talk about that too. It's not as black and white as most people are trying to make this thing. Let's have the conversation. Let's look for the answers. Let's question things. Because the science theoretically is never settled. It's always evolving. Coming up, the 6 at 6. Top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour we'll get to next.
From Smithville to Shawnee Mission, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
6:50, it is great to have you here on a busy Wednesday on KCMO Talk Radio. It's that time of the morning. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Top of the list this morning, a child under the age of 10 was killed yesterday morning after a vehicle struck her while she was riding her bicycle to school. KCPD responded to Longview Road and Food Lane at about 7:19 on reports of a critical injury crash. Preliminary investigation showed that a Ford Transit van was traveling north on Food Lane when it turned onto Longview at the intersection. A young girl was riding her bicycle in a marked crosswalk with a green signal. Police said the van hit the girl, causing her to fall. She was taken to a local hospital and later pronounced dead. The Hickman Mills School District confirming in a statement that the girl was at an Ingalls Elementary School on her way there that morning and tragically lost her life. So that yesterday in Kansas City, and I saw local news reports as well that witnesses ran up to the girl, obviously called 911, and were praying with her, knowing full well it was not looking good. But that tragedy happening on the streets of Kansas City yesterday.
Number 2.
Next up in our 6 at 6 here on KCMO, Kansas City is hopeful that a temporary jail will open up before the World Cup. The city's one step closer to starting construction on a temporary jail that is supposed to be opened up in 7 months. Permanent city jail that will go up off of 40 Highway next to Jackson County's new facility won't be open until 2029. So what do? They got to figure out something before that World Cup next year. And they are hopeful that things are going to move forward because yesterday an ordinance passed out of committee. And then it will be discussed on Thursday, tomorrow, by the full 13 city council members. Tomorrow's meeting starts at 2 p.m. If the city approves the ordinance, construction could start in December of this year, and the jail could be opened up by May, with World Cup matches starting the following month. Here's a thought. If you have the money and time for a temporary jail, can you just leave it up till the new jail is built in 2029? Why are we trying to make Kansas City a safer place only when people from other parts of the world are coming to town? Why not try to make Kansas City a safer place for Kansas Cityans today? There's a novel concept, right? Unbelievable.
Number 3.
6 at 6 continues. This news yesterday. Lance Shockley was executed by lethal injection Tuesday for the 2005 murder of a Missouri State Highway Patrol Sergeant Carl Graham Jr. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe denied clemency on Monday, saying the killing of a state trooper investigating Shockley's criminal actions was an attack not only on a dedicated law enforcement officer, but on the rule of law itself. Shockley, 48 years old, was pronounced dead last night shortly before 6:15 p.m. He was convicted of first-degree murder for ambushing Sergeant Graham outside of his home in Carter County. Prosecutors said that Shockley shot Graham from behind, paralyzing him before firing again in the face and the shoulder. Minutes before his execution yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court denied a stay of execution.
Number 4.
Moving along in the 6 at 6, there was a redistricting meeting last night. More than 200 Kansans gathered at the Powell Community Center to discuss Republican state lawmakers looking into redrawing the Kansas congressional map. The event was put on by the advocacy organization Kansas Coalition for Common Sense. So this comes one day after Kansas lawmakers met on Monday to approve legislative budgets heading into next year's session. And they are, yes, going to consider a possible special session coming up later this year to redistrict and potentially squeeze out Sharice Davids in the 3rd District here in Johnson County. So that is something that is being considered. It is potentially on the table, and there was a big meeting last night. Johnson County residents voicing their concerns. Of course, she is the only Democrat representing Kansas in Congress. There's no doubt about it. It is gerrymandering. I've made that very clear. Same thing happened in Missouri. It was gerrymandering. it would be gerrymandering if they do this in the state of Kansas as well. No one can convince you otherwise. I mean, I guess someone can try, but no one's going to convince me otherwise. We know what it is. But once again, the game is being played by the right that the left has played for a long time. So if you want to have a conversation about some of these other blue states that have 1 or 0 members in the House of Representatives for the Republican Party, we can have that conversation. But there really isn't a leg to stand on when you look at some of these maps and their makeups nationally in some of the bluest states in the country. But yes, it would be gerrymandering in Kansas. There's no doubt about it. Let's keep it rolling here on the 6 at 6 this morning.
Number 5.
Charlie Kirk being awarded by the President of the United States last night the Presidential Medal of Freedom in a very powerful moment at the White House.
He was assassinated in the prime of his life for boldly speaking the truth, for living his faith and relentlessly fighting for a better and stronger America. He loved this country. And that's why this afternoon it's my privilege to posthumously award Charles James Kirk, our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you.
That was President Trump yesterday, and we'll talk more about that this morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. But a great job by the president and his team in keeping Charlie Kirk's memory alive on what would have been Charlie's 32nd birthday. Unbelievable. And last up in our 6 at 6.
Number 6.
It's been a heavy 6 at 6 with all this news locally and nationally. Major League Baseball playoffs. Dodgers beat the Brewers 5-1 last night. They lead the National League Championship Series 2-0. So the Dodgers jump out to an early lead in that series. 5-1 win last night, up 2-0 in the series. Tonight, you've got the ALCS. The Mariners also up 2-0 in that series. They're home tonight. Mark's got his Mariners hat on. How you feeling there, big man?
I like it. Their best pitcher's going tonight. They've got their second best pitcher tomorrow night, so maybe we'll see a sweep.
Whoa, old George Kirby tonight.
Yep.
Wow, that's great, man. Well, we'll see. Mark's got those Seattle ties, born in that Pacific Northwest. So if the Royals aren't in there, we'll let them root for the Mariners. There you go. There's your 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. What happened at the airport here in Kansas City that has people upset? We'll tell you next. I actually have zero problem with what the Kansas City airport decided to do or not do yesterday. But I do believe there's some hypocrisy here. 7:06, good morning. Glad you're joining us on KCMO to start your Wednesday. So there was a video that was put out by Kristi Noem that was sent to all airports around the country, or at least the major airports around the country. And the video from Kristi Noem was about basically blaming the Democrats for the government shutdown. Now, you and I both know that I believe that to be the case. I think it's pretty evident when you need 60 votes in the Senate and you have all the Republicans and a couple of Democrats who have voted to reopen the government, and you have a handful of Democrats not willing to do that, then there is one political party to blame when all the people in charge are trying to do is keep the government spending exactly where it has been for the last several months. Not add to it, no pork, just keep it where it's at. And that is not good enough for the party that's not in power. So Kristi Noem, U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, sent this video out to all the different airports and asked them to run this video blaming Democrats for the shutdown at TSA checkpoints. And I like Kristi Noem outside of the fact that she shot and killed her dog. That's really not that endearing of a quality. But outside of that, I think Kristi Noem's doing a darn good job. But when I saw the story on Channel 9 last night, I'm like, you know what? I can't sit here and say that the Kansas City airport is doing the wrong thing.
Major airports across the U.S., including KCI, are declining to play a DHS video blaming Democrats for the government shutdown.
However, Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government.
At least a half dozen airports are now refusing to air that video at TSA checkpoints. It shows DHS Director Kristi Noem blaming delays at airports on Democrats. Airport directors say they have a policy against partisan messaging guided by the Hatch Act.
Okay, first off, if there's one thing I don't want when I'm getting patted up and down at TSA, it's hearing and seeing from more politicians. It's a bad enough experience at TSA. The only people who could make it worse are our political class, John.
Bingo. That's all you need to do is light up the passengers before they get on the plane with one more stimulus.
Well, that's where Kristi Noem has to realize, I know what she's going for here, and I agree with her. But the last thing I need in front of me or behind me in a TSA line is some triggered liberal who goes nuts because they see Kristi Noem or they hear her voice, and that causes a big scene. TSA's got to take, control of it, and then we're all late for our flight. So I actually am sympathetic to KCI saying, we're not running the video, all right? Plus, no one's paying attention. Where are you going to put the video?
Right.
I'm just trying to get my shoes off and get my kids through security and the whole thing. Like, I don't have time for Kristi Noem's videos.
Exactly, right? It's up to the right to be the bigger side here, right? We know they've lost the remotes to all airport televisions that are stuck on CNN. But we can rise above it with this one. This one's kind of a bad placement. Maybe a good idea for the video, but you stick it on YouTube before you try to watch what you want to watch, something like that.
I'm fine with that.
Right.
But, I understand why KCI would say no to this.
Not at all.
That being said, you walk around the new airport, and everywhere you turn, you see Quentin Lucas and you hear his voice. I mean, if you haven't been to the airport in a while, you go up there, and it's like his voice is always on the loudspeaker. Now, he's not saying anything political. It's just, this is Mayor Lucas. Welcome to Kansas City. But there's a photo of the guy every time I walk out of the place. So I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't want to be political. But it's like, did Quentin Lucas build the airport, or what am I missing here? Because he gets a lot of love at that place. A lot of love,
There's
John.
a hologram down at the luggage thing, I think, too.
Yes, they are. They are, man. I mean, you walk out of that building.
Q2, I think we call him.
You walk out of that building and you can't miss the guy. So I'm just saying, be careful with the whole, we don't lean into politicians or political messages, because while his message is not political, my gosh, you would have thought that the mayor built the airport with his own two hands with the amount of love he gets up there.
Yeah, and we don't need the airport to be a vehicle for more messages because, again, when the other party's in power, then what are we going to have to listen to?
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, would you really want to hear from any of Biden's lackeys?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm a hard pass on that.
Hi, it's Mayor Pete.
No.
You should be on the train.
Choo-choo.
Right?
Caboose, man. No, we're not doing that.
What's the luggage rifler guy's name? I can't remember. The ball guy that put on the dresses right out of the luggage.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Sam something. Sam Winkman, I don't know, something like that. Yeah,
Anyway.
the guy who was stealing luggage from random women at the airport as a dude who worked for Biden. I forgot about that guy.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of vacations, the president of the United States was talking yesterday about taking a trip, going to an airport maybe. Well, he wouldn't go to the airport. He'd just hop on Air Force One. But take a listen to what he said when he was talking about the guy who he followed up in the White House and how he thinks they would look quite a bit different on the beach.
What does that mean?
Do you like to visit Argentina soon?
I do. I would love to. I'm just a little busy. I'd love to go to Argentina. I'd like to be like Biden. I'd like to go to the beach. You know, my legs are not quite as thin as his. My legs are slightly heavier. My arms are slightly larger. My body is a little bit larger than his. I'm not sure it would be appreciated on the beach, but I'm not going to take a chance. You won't see me in a bathing suit. You won't see in a bathing suit sitting on a beach in Argentina, falling down, not being able to lift a 3-ounce chair, meant for old people to lift, and he couldn't lift it, so we had a problem. He spent too much time on a beach. Somebody told him that he looked good in a bathing suit.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, Trump's making fun of himself there, too. Let's be very clear. He's making fun of himself, saying I got bigger legs and bigger arms and a bigger body. So it's not like he's just totally trashing Biden. He's making fun of himself yesterday as well in that commentary. And he was talking about Argentina because he had Javier Milei there yesterday, the Argentinian libertarian leader. Say that one 10 times in a row. The Argentinian libertarian leader, Javier Milei, was at the White House, and that's why he was asked by a reporter if he would go to Argentina. And Trump somehow turns it into, I'm kind of busy, but if I did go, I wouldn't put myself in a bathing suit like President Biden did. And it's like, that's pretty good. And then he starts goofing on Biden picking up one of those beach chairs that's all of 3 ounces and stumbling and fumbling all over himself. So he never misses, man.
No.
He really doesn't miss. My goodness. It is 7:13, and if you didn't see it yesterday, the president, of course, had a great moment at the White House for Charlie Kirk on his 32nd birthday. And did you see who was there? Bill O'Reilly took a photo with Tucker Carlson, Glenn Beck, and Jesse Waters. And I reached out to Bill yesterday. He is going to join us on Friday morning at 8:05. So I will ask about his trip to the White House, the Charlie Kirk event yesterday that took place, and, of course, what has been an incredible week on the world stage as well. So Bill O'Reilly Friday morning. His morning update is also coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And in the wake of yesterday's news, a famous country music star talked about how Charlie Kirk has really inspired him to let it rip when it comes to wearing his faith and his love of country on his sleeve. We'll tell you who that was coming up next.
What if churches had a longer line outside and all them bars on Friday night? What if people prayed for people who ain't on their side? What if good ran off the bat? Them streets of gold up there'd be packed. This whole world would look a lot better than we found it. If we make heaven crowded.
That is the new song from Cole Swindell that he released here in the last couple of weeks. And yesterday, on Charlie Kirk's 32nd birthday, Cole Swindell sat down with our friends at the Daily Wire. That's, of course, the Ben Shapiro owned and led operation. And talked about how Charlie Kirk has inspired him and inspired that song in many ways to be more vocal. And especially when you're in country music. And we've heard this a lot over the last couple of weeks in the wake of the Zach Bryan drama where he puts out a new song and he's trashing the troops and the whole thing. That there is this, not even all that hidden, but this streak of anti-Americanism that does exist in Nashville, in the country music scene. John Rich making it very clear on social media the last couple of weeks that people like Zach Bryan are unfortunately part of the norm now in the country music scene. And you've got folks like Cole Swindell who are pushing back on that because guess what? They represent the vast majority of the listenership anyway. And here's what Cole Swindell said yesterday on, once again, the 32nd birthday, what would have been the 32nd birthday of Charlie Kirk. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom at the White House yesterday. His wife, Erika, was there to accept it, of course, on his behalf. And listen to what Cole Swindell had to say.
The guy just, got assassinated for believing how I believe, except for he was a little more bold about it. And I think that's what got me. It was just, made me look in the mirror, somebody that's living like I should be living and spreading the word as a Christian, what I should be doing with the platform that I have. And I think, you're seeing that. And like I said, I am by no means the first one. Obviously, John Rich, people, the Al Deans, people that have led the way in that. And now, like I said, I just think a lot of us are just, fed up with feeling like we can't say how we believe. There's no harm in that, and like I said, I'm a loving person. I'm not judgmental. I kind of stay out of the way and do my own thing and try to be good to people. And that's just it's not good enough anymore. I have to influence other people to be good to people and just keep trying to do all we can. Like I said, I never had a chance to meet Charlie, but I'm learning a lot more about him every day. The clips, the things I'm seeing. Even this song was inspired. I happened to run across the clip of Erika the first time she spoke after, and that really is what is what hit me the hardest. I'd heard "Make Heaven Crowded," I'd seen the phrase, but it never hit me like when I watched her say that. Charlie, you alongside Jesus, doing what you always wanted to do. Make heaven crowded.
And that is part of Cole Swindell's new song and new message that he has released in the last couple of weeks. And he talked about it yesterday on what would have been the 32nd birthday of Charlie Kirk, who received posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So if you haven't seen some of these lyrics, you heard it there from Mark coming back from the break. But just real quick, he writes here, I bit my tongue for too long, said it ain't my place. I've kept Jesus in the back seat. I can't any longer. After what we all saw last week, I can't help but wonder, what if churches had a longer line outside? What if people prayed for people who ain't on their side? What if good ran off the bad? That's not even political in nature, right? All of those things that he writes there in this song are absolutely true. That the country and the world would be a better place if the churches had longer lines outside and if people prayed for people who are not on their side. And is that what you're getting right now in this current political climate and environment? And in too many cases, that's not happening. In too many cases, it becomes way too tribal in nature. You're seeing it play out in the Virginia Attorney General's race, where you have a Democrat candidate who has text messages wishing death upon his political opponents from a couple of years ago, and you have a hard time finding anybody to condemn it. You have these leaked text messages that came out yesterday in this big Politico piece from these knuckle-dragger GOP staffers, including a couple of guys in Kansas who are talking about Hitler and all these other things in just a grotesque way. So there is some of it. The difference is right now the GOP at least has condemned it start to finish. Kansas GOP shut down the operation. All these guys got fired. They have no connection with the state party anymore. One guy got fired by Kobach here in the last couple of days. So good. You take care of it. You call it out. That's what's supposed to happen. That's not happening across the aisle right now, which is sad to say. It needs to. Everybody's got to be able to call out their own crazy and evil. And Cole Swindell is exactly right with the song that he wrote, with the message that he is trying to get across. And I'm hopeful that we'll get more of this out of Nashville. I actually saw Cole Swindell, it would have been July of 2018 at Cheyenne Frontier Days. We drove out to Cheyenne from Kansas City in July of 18, visited a couple of friends. One of Kate's college roommates was living out in Denver at the time. She met us up there with her husband. We went to a couple of shows, and one of them was Cole Swindell. Went to the rodeo, went to the concerts at night, and the whole deal. And he does a good live show. I'm not sitting here as his biggest fan, but he does a good job. He's got some good hits, and he does a good live show.
5150. Somebody called the Popo.
Is that him?
I think so.
I think that's Dirk Bentley, actually.
I got my guys mixed up.
I think that's all right, John. Yeah. That's all right. I didn't expect you to come in with a Cole Swindell music reference, so you're already punching above your weight class there. But I thought he did actually a darn good job on a live show out there in Cheyenne when I saw him. And now he's kind of been quiet, I feel like, the last couple of years. These country guys, they come and go, and now they're back on the scene. Maybe this will get him back in the mix as one of a headlining act, because he hasn't been over the last couple of years or so. We'll see. Coming up on KCMO, when would you be okay with a teacher touching your child? And I don't mean in a negative, nasty way. I'll explain and get to your calls next.
from Lenexa to Lee Summit. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
You tell me, when is it okay for a teacher to pick up a child in a school? There's a lot of controversy right now because of what happened at the Blue Valley School Board meeting this week, when a teacher who had been at the school for 25 years was canned. Supporters of hers at Sunset Ridge Elementary said that she was doing the right thing. Here's what happened. There was a special needs child who was having a meltdown in the hallway. And after attempts to de-escalate did not work, this teacher, Barb Hart, picked up the student and transported the student to the safe space in her classroom. Well, this week, the school board, the Blue Valley School Board, determined that she violated policy on emergency safety interventions, which says restraint can only be used when less restrictive alternatives were determined to be inappropriate or ineffective, and when a student's behaviors present an immediate physical danger to themselves or others. Now, without having seen any video, you have a lot of parents who are totally outraged by this, and I'm with them. If this story is what has been reported by Fox 4 and others, and you had a special needs child who was having a meltdown in a hallway, and a 25-year tenured teacher who obviously has some experience doing this picks up that child and moves that child into her classroom, into a safe space, which is oftentimes the best thing you can do for a child in that situation, ends up with her losing her job? You're going to have teachers, you are going to create an environment where teachers are scared to death to do anything that may be helping these kids. Here's some of the reporting from Fox 4 and some of the parents who are disgusted by this.
The policy for this Blue Valley is to not touch the child and just let them kind of flounder, where she gave dignity to that child, scooped him up, got him into a safe space so that they weren't on display for everybody else to see.
An addendum to Monday's agenda said Hart would be fired for violating policy 3522. It says district personnel may use seclusion and or physical restraint only when less restrictive alternatives are determined by a school employee to be inappropriate or ineffective, and when a student's behavior presents an immediate danger to self or others.
The child is scared. They are looking for a trusted adult to guide them and to sometimes make decisions that ensure their well-being. If compassionate responses to these mental needs are punishable under policy 3522, then the system is failing both our teachers and our students.
And I agree with that mother there at the end. You know, if you deal with, obviously, little kids, whether they're special needs or not, you deal with meltdowns. And in this case, it happened to be a special needs child having a meltdown in the hallway. And having 3 kids under 7, you deal with a meltdown or two once in a while. All right, I'm in the thick of meltdowns right now. And removal from a situation oftentimes is exactly what that child needs. They needed to reset their body. They needed to reset their mind. They needed to reset everything around them. And as far as I can tell, based on what we know about the story, that's what this teacher, Barb Hart, tried to do and do effectively. And who's sitting there making the determination as to whether or not that was the specific right moment? If there were other forms of possible de-escalation, who's the person who's making the call as to whether or not they did enough before they put their hands on that child? Who's in charge of that? Is it a school board? Is it a superintendent? Is it somebody else? But I saw this quote from Blue Valley School Board member Jim McMullen. My perspective is to extend grace to a teacher who has given 25 years to the district and recognize that some situations involve judgment calls. That's exactly right. But like so much of public education, what has it turned into? A bureaucratic nightmare. Letter of the law garbage that is not beneficial or helpful to anyone. Certainly not the kids. Everyone's trying to protect themselves from a lawsuit or God forbid something else. And that's the world that public education has created for itself largely, John.
Yes, when kids have a fit, a temper tantrum, that's one thing. When special needs children have it, it's sometimes a lot more intense and would require perhaps the action that was taken. It seems to me her actions fit the criteria described. What's stupid is if they actually had some system in place and said, well, we need to get permission on how to handle this child. I know. Let's ask Barb. She's got 25 years experience. Would it probably be the procedure?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's not like this is some teacher who showed up 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And is picking up kids and throwing them in classrooms in like some dark closet.
Or something, right?
I was waiting for like the story to take a turn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he stuck him in the broom closet or something for a half hour.
Right.
And that's not what happened here.
And the parents of this kid even wrote a recommendation for this teacher to keep her job.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, this is school board activity at its absolute worst. 913-408-7957. I mean, I'm all in on supporting Barb here. All right? Barb Hart deserves, I think, the support of the Blue Valley community, of the Overland Park community by and large as well. And, I'm not sitting here getting into the weeds of what the Blue Valley School Board does, but of all the issues that they've got in these school districts around Kansas City, to be sitting there looking at this and saying, you know what, 25-year teacher, throw her career out the window because she picks up a special needs kid having a meltdown in the hallway and puts the child in a classroom to basically remove them from the situation and try to help calm them down. How are you going to get good teachers who want to serve their communities when you can get fired for doing this? You tell me. At 913-408-7957. What great teacher is going to want to deal with the bureaucratic nightmare that these schools have turned into? And it's just, it's sad, it's pathetic, it's disheartening, because this industry has done enough to hurt itself. It's become jobs programs for adults who want to get into the administration, the bloated administration, and make a bunch of money, because they can't do it in the classroom. And now you got a story like this that I find just heartbreaking for teachers who want to do it the right way and help these kids out. Paul's first up on KCMO. Hey, Paul, good morning.
Hey, Pete. Yeah, this is an outrageous story. It seems to me in Johnson County that whether Antifa's taking over bridges or this incident here, there's a lack of common sense leadership in Johnson County being replaced by cowardice in leadership. This is ridiculous. This teacher should be commended for having the empathy, the sympathy for this child to get it into a safe place and protect physically and mentally this child. I don't know what's going on in Johnson County. It's more like Loudoun County in Virginia.
It's full of cowards is what it is, Paul. It's full of cowards.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Pete.
On the text line, Pete, I work with special needs kids. They often require actual human touch and compassion to help them feel normal. I'm sick of the left dehumanizing all life decisions. I don't know the political makeup of any of the people involved in the decision making here. I just know that common sense has to once in a while prevail. 913-408-7957. Bob is in Blue Valley. Hey, Bob, good morning.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, Bob. What's happening, big guy?
Not much, man. I see it all the time, man. I work in a school district, and I see it all the time. These kids, the special needs especially, sometimes they I don't want to say throw tantrums, but they just they have a bad day and something triggers them, and they just kind of get a little haywire. And the teacher, in my opinion, did the right thing. She wanted to de-escalate. She probably picked that student up and wanted to get it out of the situation. The hallways are hectic, and if it's loud and kids are in there, and it's just a trigger for these special needs, especially to get them out into a safe room where it's quiet, it's calm, they know it, it's a safe space. I see it on the daily. I'm in many schools. I see it on the daily where it happens, and these teachers aren't trying to harm the kid. They're just trying to get them out of that situation and put them where they're safe to be at. And you know what? And you're right about the boards. These teachers, and I see it's happened in the last 10 years, their hands are tied. They don't want to do nothing for fear of lawsuit, or someone's going to say, oh, my gosh, you picked that child up, and you know what? And, going with the veteran, she's been 25 years, there's something. She's been there 25 years. There's something to say about that.
Exactly right. No, you're right. There's fear of lawsuits. I mean, God bless attorneys, but they have ruined a lot of things. There's no doubt about it. Everyone's looking to file a lawsuit. Let's go to Tammy and Shawnee. What's up, Tammy?
Hey, Pete. I agree with what he was just saying. It is state law. According to the Department of Education, we must follow guidelines when something like this happens. We are not allowed to pick a child up. They have to walk of their own volition to that quiet space. We can help them, but they have to walk of their own volition. We can't pick a child up and do that. And I mean, I don't agree with the board's decision, but the fact is the administrators had no choice, and so did the board. They had no choice but to let her go because it did open up the district to a lot of lawsuits. The fact remains.
What does that say about our culture, Tammy?
Exactly.
You know, what does it say about the disgusting nature of the culture, the frivolous lawsuits that get filed every single day in this country because of huckster attorneys who are trying to make a quick buck? Because they have no other skill sets of note. What does it say about our culture that this is the kind of stuff that can happen now?
And this is why it's so difficult to be a teacher because you feel like you have no support. And sometimes parents disagree when you're trying to do the right thing by your child, whether it's be choosing projects that they work on or discussing, the child's behavior with the parent. Many times, I'm sorry.
But let me ask you this, Tammy. Let me
agree.
just ask you this, because I do want to push back on something you just said there. The school board determined that the teacher, Barb Hart, had violated its policy on emergency safety interventions, which says restraint can only be used when less restrictive alternatives were determined to be inappropriate or ineffective. So who's in? That's a very gray area. So who's in charge of making that determination?
I'm sure that the administrator went to the superintendent and administrators, especially in special education, discussed the whole situation, what happened. Since it was out in the hall, it was probably on camera. And so they probably, at that time, were able to determine that.
Oh, what an embarrassment. What an embarrassment.
Yes,
I'm up against it. I appreciate it, Tammy, but what an utter embarrassment. And, the way Tammy's describing it there, the assistant administrator went to the head administrator, who went to the superintendent, who went to the superintendent's, second secretary. I mean,
programs.
That's the problem. That right there is the problem. It's not about the kids anymore. It's not about the well-being of the kids. It's about CYA from the adults protecting their own skin and their own gigs. And that's not what educating our children is supposed to be about. I have for a long time been critical of the system, even though I'm a K through 12 public school kid, but it has changed dramatically the last generation. And it's not the fault of the teachers in the classrooms. 913-408-7957. Pete, as a direct care aide for mentally handicapped kids, that's exactly what our protocol would have been. You remove them or the stimulation, that's the problem. They are overstimulated, and removing them when they're overwhelmed is part of the solution. 913-408-7957. More on this with you next.
On Wednesday's Guy Benson Show, Congresswoman Ashley Hinson of Iowa, she's running for Senate in the Hawkeye State. She will join us on day 15, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Story here, Blue Valley Schools Sunset Ridge Elementary teacher Barb Hart was fired this week by Blue Valley Schools. Why? Because she was called to the hallway to help with a special needs child after attempts to de-escalate failed. The child was having a meltdown in the hallway. This teacher, Barb Hart, picked up the student, transported the student to the safe space in her classroom, and the school board determined this week that she violated its policy on emergency safety interventions, which says restraint can only be used when less restrictive alternatives were determined to be inappropriate or ineffective. And that got Barb Hart fired. What a joke. Amy is in Lansing. Go ahead, Amy. You're on KCMO.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm a school board member here in Lansing, and this is a problem that is out of control in all districts right now. We have teachers that have even came to our board wanting to speak to us during a board meeting about the safety issues, not just for other students, but for themselves. And our current board even denied them speaking to the board because of this. And we need to stop firing our teachers for using common sense and de-escalating and taking control of situations just because administration is more worried about being sued than protecting the kids and the environment. We've had so many disruptions. Kindergartners where almost their whole year have been disrupted because of one student because they're too afraid to remove them from the classroom, just like this teacher did, and instead will leave them screaming in the halls, crying in the halls, disrupting a class for an hour on end, and all because of that one little statement, the least restrictive, environment, when there is proper training on how to do this. And she should absolutely not have been fired. This is wrong, and it's going to affect teachers and students until people start standing up to this. And I'm ashamed that board did that to her.
Yeah, it was a 6-1 vote. Amy, thank you for chiming in as a school board member up there in Lansing. I do appreciate it. It's operating out of fear. No good business operates well out of fear, and no good school can operate out of fear. Mark and Lenexa, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Good morning. I was just thinking that this would be the proper role of the teachers union, but shouldn't have come to this, but they're too busy out doing Nazi pens and stuff like that.
Yeah, if the teacher was getting fired for trying to trans the kids, they'd be all over it. But this one, I'm going to stay away, right? 913-408-7957. Maisie and Perry, go ahead, Maisie.
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to say earlier you asked who is the one that makes the decision on what those less restrictive actions are. And first of all, she was called after it's already been attempted to de-escalate the situation. So it sounds like those were already taken. But in that moment, the only other option would be trying to talk to the child. And if that child is, so overstimulated that they are screaming, crying, maybe even, throwing their arms to try to keep people away, then, those have already been exhausted. So I think she did the absolute best thing in, securing the child and moving them to safety. But in that moment, she is the one. She was the teacher that was called to handle the situation. She's the one that gets to determine if they've already tried less restrictive methods. So, and I think any good lawyer would also argue that with her. So the fact that, someone else gets to come in and say, no, you didn't follow protocol when, there is not a clear outline of what less restrictive actions need to be taken is ridiculous.
Totally agree, Maisie. Thank you very much. It's a joke. It's embarrassing. It's sad. It's everything that, as far as I can tell, Barb Hart did exactly what you would want a teacher to do in this situation with a special needs child. She was called into the situation. She removed that child. She's been at it for 25 years. She's been around the block, and now she loses her job for being proactive. And I believe looking out for the kid. I got 30 seconds, Mark and Belton. It's all yours.
Good morning. What I wanted to say is that, in a quick note, a vast majority of the school board members, and this is not a blanket statement, but I'm going to say certainly within Johnson County and the surrounding area, Kansas side, Missouri side, our liberal mindset and that there doesn't become a gray area. I'll caveat that with saying if we want to see change, if we want there to be change, then more people need to then step up and become board members and make the change.
I agree. I agree with that. You're spot on with that last statement there in particular. There are elections coming up in Johnson County here in a couple of weeks for school board races and city council races. And, we're not going to spend a ton of time on them because, to be honest, it doesn't appeal to a wide swath of the audience. But I would just encourage you to do your homework on these races. Now, are most of the school board members in Johnson County more left than right? Absolutely. But I'm not sure how this story factors into left versus right. This is really just common sense. Barb Hart does have a GoFundMe. We'll share that on our KCMO pages as well. News in a minute. We're back with you to start the 8 o'clock hour next. Well, here I was right before the top of the hour saying, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these hyper-local elections coming up in a couple of weeks because it's hard to get them to be super compelling to a large swath of the audience on both sides of state line. So I know that upsets some of you, but it's the reality of our business. Our job is to get as many people to listen to this show right now as we possibly can in Kansas and Missouri, and hyper-focusing on school boards or city councils, unless it's like that Prairie Village deal last week where I'm there and I get a wacko candidate saying that, they don't like white people living in Prairie Village, or, I'm paraphrasing there, but you get the point. I'll play that because that's entertaining. But, breaking down city council races is just not part of the job for us to succeed. And I apologize to some of you for that. You're not going to like hearing that, but that's the way of the world. And we've got a job to do. And I would say the ratings suggest we're doing a damn good job of it.
Well, you got to cover your block and your zip code as best you can. We'd like to mow your lawn and come over, but we're just kind of no, we're covering the big picture for you. That's harder, but you got to do something on your own. And this is one where I was saying where I look, I get a little frustrated, and the person will say, well, we're for the kids. So it is a little harder to find the information, but you're going to have to work and maybe attend an event where you can personally ask a question that doesn't seem to get responded to on the website.
I would agree. I got a pamphlet showed up on my doorstep the other day for city council.
They look good, don't they?
They look great, man. They spent a lot of money on those things. But, the guy says, I'm a fan of economic development. And it's like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
What does that mean? I mean, do you want to have incentives utilized by all of your cities in Johnson County to basically pay for the developers' projects and apartments? If so, I'm out. If that's your definition of economic development, I'm out. So I've got to do my research. I'm just like you in that sense. I'm going to the polls here in a couple of weeks on the Kansas side for city council races. And I admit, I haven't done all my own research yet. So I have to do that. So I can't sit here and do it for everyone else, to be totally honest. I can't. As much as I'd love to, and yes, John would love to mow your lawn. He's a busy guy as well. But that being said, I did see the Kansas City Star endorsed this morning in the Overland Park mayor's race incumbent Kurt Skoog over Faris Farasati, who was on the council for a few years and lost his race a couple of years ago. And you've got Skoog running on the status quo as, of course, the incumbent. And you've got Farasati running against the idea of incentives being utilized heavily by Overland Park, property taxes that continue to get too damn high, expenditures that continue to increase at a rapid rate, and also the idea of the Royals going to 119th and Knoll being the dumbest idea possible. So, like, that right there, you decide on Overland Park. What direction do you want to go? And there are people who have asked whether or not, it makes sense to do a debate here on KCMO. I suppose I could reach out to both guys and see if they're interested, but something would tell me that especially in these local races, people typically don't want to go down the road of doing debates because there's a lot more to lose than there is to gain. But I'm happy to be proven wrong on that. Victor's on KCMO. Go ahead, Victor.
Good morning, Pete. I'm not the most educated individual on this particular topic. However, we have been fighting for this up in Platte County for quite a while. There's a big problem with trying to fight the most prolific employer in Platte County, which is the school districts, the educational system, that whole juggernaut right there. The problem is that the elections are held in April when nobody's really paying attention. Jefferson City needs to move these to November when people do. The district calls out all their employees, all the teachers union, all the bloated administrators. And so we walk in, we put people up, good conservative Republicans up for the school board, but we're walking in 2,700 votes right in the hole. And, you look at what they got because these people have PhDs, they're making six figures. You got a principal, three vice principals for frickin' schools, and the scores are in the toilet. According to the Park Hill Show Me Institute, we got a C+, and we're one of the top schools in the state. This is a frickin' joke. These people don't deserve what they get, and the school boards just go, as soon as they elect a superintendent, they just fall right in line. And it's just like the health department with Kansas City during COVID. It's whatever they say. They've got the degree. They've got the numbers. Oh, they know better than we do. No, the parents need to get involved.
Yeah.
You people need to get out there. My kids are out of school. My kids are already gone through the system. You want to know why there's a kitty litter box in the bathroom? That's what you get. This is what you need to get involved for. This is what's going on.
Yeah, they should be trying to fire teachers who are cleaning out the kitty litter box versus firing teachers for helping out kids in the hallways who are having meltdowns. I'm just going to leave it at that.
There are good and great teachers out there.
I agree.
But there are so few and far between, and they're just bombarded. And it's like, I got to protect my job.
Well,
I got to watch what I say.
I don't even know. Thank you, Victor. If it's few and far between, I would like to believe that it's not uncommon to have great teachers, but they have been handcuffed by a system that the bureaucratic state has created over 50 years. It didn't happen overnight. All right, let's get to this next story here. Headline, U.S. sees steepest decline of mothers of young children in the workforce in 40 years. This was shared by the University of Kansas on social media here in the last day or so. And I saw this story shared by KU. It's from CBS News. And I thought, that's great.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
I was wondering. I'm like, which way does this go? I'll bet it doesn't go the way I think it should go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great news.
I thought maybe that's a good sign.
That's what I would think. So it goes on to share the story about, one woman in particular who said here, the average daycare we found was $500 a week. I made $1,000 every 2 weeks. So with 2 kids, I was like, this just doesn't make sense. It would basically cancel out my check. They decided that they could live off of her husband's income. He is a plumber, so she said goodbye to a job that she once loved. Here's the national trend. More than 400,000 women left the U.S. workforce in the first half of 2025, according to a University of Kansas analysis of the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. It's the steepest decline in more than 40 years for mothers of young children. Economist Misty Hegenes found that childcare was the main reason young mothers were leaving their jobs. So the story goes on to basically bemoan the cost of childcare. But I'm here to suggest this is, in a backhanded way, actually a great thing for everybody. Yeah, the childcare costs are out of control. But at the same time, if this means that mothers can be home with their young kids during their early years of life in particular, for large swaths of their day, instead of putting them into a daycare, that's awesome. That's how it was intended to be. And I realize that may not be able to be the case for everybody. I understand and I'm well aware of some of those limitations. But to frame this as, boy, this is a real tragedy for the workforce. How about, once again, like the school story, how about we think about what this is about for the kids first? How about we think about what this means for society first? Not about what it means for some Fortune 500 company. Not about what it means for the stock price of some company that just churns and burns through people and will blow you out the minute that they have to make some cuts and won't care one bit about what your daycare bills are. How about we look at it from that perspective? Maybe it's also many young mothers waking up to the realization that if they have to pay for daycare and it takes a large chunk of their salary, then what are they actually working for? Like, if you do the math on what the daycare is versus what you make, and you suddenly are like, wait, okay, so I'm making X amount of dollars a year. I'm making, just pick a number, 50, 60, 70 grand, whatever. But 25, 30 of it is going to daycare for a couple of kids. And then I got my taxes I got to pay on that 50, 60, 70 grand. What do I have left? What am I working for? 15, 20, 25, $30,000 a year? I'm making somebody else potentially a lot of money to be away from my kid, and I'm spending all this money on daycare to boot as well? So instead of looking at it and saying, oh, boy, what a shame this is, women are leaving the workforce, and, oh, boy, that's just, oh, gosh, we got to figure out what to do about these daycare costs. I mean, I'm not saying we don't need to do that as well, although I don't think the answer is government getting involved. There is actually a net positive here. If 400,000 women left the workforce in the first half of the year, well, guess what? That's at least 400,000 kids who get more time with their mother And that is something to celebrate, not something to bemoan. 913-408-7957. That's how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Let's hear from the moms. If you're someone who has left the workforce recently, if this describes you, I'd love to hear your why at 913-408-7957. Or if it's even a conversation you're having right now with yourself. Maybe you're driving to the office and you're thinking, gosh dang, I want that to be me. Or maybe it's not you. I don't, whatever. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.
from Leawood to Liberty. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
University of Kansas shared the story on its Facebook page here. KU study shows that more than 400,000 women left the workforce in the first half of 2025, the steepest decline of working mothers of young children in 40 years. Now, KU and the CBS News story goes on to basically bemoan the fact and say, well, child care costs are too high. I'm looking at it and I'm saying this is great news. 400,000 kids, at least 400,000 kids. I mean, it could be more if you got 2 kids at home, are now around their mothers more frequently at a critical age and time that you will never get back. 913-408-7957. Chrissy is in Kansas City first up. Hi, Chrissy. Good morning.
Good morning. So years ago, I had 2 small children, and I worked for a large bank. They had an on-site daycare across the parking lot, and so they offered what they considered subsidized childcare. And the cost of the childcare was about 65% of my income. And my husband works, so then we're maintaining 2 vehicles to drive to 2 separate jobs to essentially pay for the cars to get me to work, the daycare, and it made 0 cents, so I stayed home. I agree 1,000% that this is a wonderful opportunity for children and for women to be with their children, but there are a lot of things that we miss out on when we do that, especially as a mother, you don't receive a pension or retirement, you don't receive health benefits. There is a lot of things that when we re-enter the workforce that are not valued. So I go home and I maintain a budget for the house, and I maintain the schedules of 4 to 6 people. That does not have a value for you going back into the workforce. And that is a real struggle. Also, you tend to lose yourself, which I did. There's not a lot of organizations that serve mothers that are home with their children. I think I attended a MOPS program, which was great. That helped. But those are types of things that they need to have available to mothers that do that organizations should focus on. If we really think that this is important, we also have to value their time that they spent with their children and those jobs that they did in their home, because we don't do that currently. I would also say that as I now have children that are in their late 20s, and I still had surprise late in life children with my husband, that we do tend to think that it's very important to be home with our very young children. You don't know if the daycare is pinching them or whatever's going on, and the cost is outrageous. But as I've raised my children, I want to let parents know it's very important for you to also be there for your children at middle school and high school. There are things that are influencing them and experiences that they're having in life where they really need you. So this whole idea that you're just I had this idea I would flourish. My kids would, become 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th graders, and then I would gradually re-enter the workforce, which I did. But I did that and learned that it is still important to have that balance where you have parents that are there for your children when they are at an age when those decisions and those issues that are presented to your children are much more significant than they are generally when they're 2 or 3 years old.
Chrissy, thank you very much for sharing your story. I appreciate it. That is, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, the parenting doesn't end. If anything, it might actually get harder in some ways, right? Versus when they're toddlers and screaming and yelling at you. And it might be worse when they're 13.
It's like computer updates. There's 1.0, 2.0.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. But you are right. I mean, this is, what I say to Kate all the time. And we're fortunate to be in a situation where, sure, we'd love more technically. Who wouldn't? But we've made that decision to have her home. I said, what you're doing, you can't put a price tag on. You just can't. And, what's difficult about it, and I understand this because I see it, when you're raising, especially little kids, you don't see those day-to-day wins that you might get going to a job. You close a big client. For us, you get a great month of ratings, and you can actually tangibly tie yourself to some level of success. You don't get that day-to-day with little kids, and I get it. And if you're someone who has been very successful in the workforce, my wife has had that prior to having children. I know many women listening right now have had that or are having that. You don't get that day-to-day gratification necessarily. And that's hard to duplicate. But the big picture, gosh, is it so worth it? Lydia's in Liberty. Go ahead, Lydia.
Yeah, hey, I want to echo the sentiments to that last caller as well, but I'll tell you too, I've done both. So I didn't want to go back into the workforce when we had our daughter, but I did. And a part of me is like, I can't be at home with my kid all the time. I know it sounds horrible, but I just felt like I was losing myself. But now that I'm older and my kids are both older, I've got a senior in high school and now a 22-year-old. My daughter that was an infant is now 22. Crazy to think. I now find myself as an older mom wanting to be home with my kiddos because they need you. They need you just as much in middle school, if not, I would argue more so, because you're molding them. I want to disciple to my children. I want to see them to become wonderful Christ followers, and not being home, I didn't feel like allowed me to do that. But now I'm running my own businesses and I'm able to be home. And when I was a labor and delivery nurse, my patients would come in and be like, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, no, you're a home engineer. You're getting to have such an impression on your home, and it wouldn't function the way it does without you. And we needed to quit devaluing ourselves as stay-at-home moms.
You're
and we
right.
need to embrace it and love it.
That word "just" has got to be removed from the conversation. Yep. And the home engineer is fantastic. Fantastic. I love that, Lydia. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. God bless.
You as well. That's tremendous. Home engineer. There you go. Put that on the resume. And you tell those corporate America folks, those Fortune 500 companies, and you get back into the workforce, put that in their pipe and smoke it. See if they could do it for 20 years. Melissa and Shawnee. Melissa and Shawnee, go ahead.
Hi. I wanted to say, first off, that I completely agree with you on all of your points so far, but what hasn't been mentioned that I've heard anyways is that I would argue that most kids being in daycare now is kind of led to where we're at now, with kids being confused because they don't have the constant, influence from their parents and getting pushed in the direction of their parents' values because the parents have to be at work all the time. I personally had 6 kids, and I stayed home when they were all young, and I would not trade that for the world. I think that's the way that it was meant to be. The moms are supposed to take care of the kids just like my mom did with us.
Yeah, 6 children. Jeez, you need a medal there, Melissa. Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. And you're right. I could not agree with you more as well when it comes to what is natural. It's not a knock on anyone who works at a daycare or anything like that, but it's what it was always intended to be. And by the way, I'll say this as well. People talk about daycare costs. Well, why do 2 people need to work now more so than ever? Because we've devalued the dollar. Inflation has ruined our ability to oftentimes live on a single family or single parent income. And, it used to be, I remember, in the old days, you had the guys would work a couple of jobs. Too many guys don't want to do that anymore either. They don't want to work a side gig. They don't want to work a second job. That's been happening forever. Bring some of that back as well. Bring that into the conversation. But when the government devalues your currency and creates massive inflation to the point where you feel like both people have to work to just keep your head above water, what does that say about the system that we've got? Coming up, 2 of the big stories happening on one side of our state line, not getting enough coverage next.
Hey, it's Vince Galanes. Catch my new show at 11 o'clock after Kevin Keatsman on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
There you go. Rolling into David Stokes with the Show Me Institute. Roll to 95819 to win $1,000. And you might have developers in Kansas City trying to do that, because this story from the Kansas City Business Journal, downtown apartment owners are seeking more incentives. Why? Because of all the shootings and crime happening. David Stokes with the Show Me Institute is here on KCMO. David, good morning. So who is wanting what?
Good morning, Pete. Great to be on the air with you as always. So Traders on Grand there, the big, development, apartment complex, condo complex with some commercial businesses. It's hard. I rarely say this for developers asking for huge subsidies, but it's hard not to have some sympathy for them here. They talk about how the shootings and the violence around them, windows have been shot out in their building, their tenants are being harassed and mugged, and how that's made it very difficult, not surprisingly, to recruit new tenants, to maintain current tenants, and how it's really making it hard for them to succeed as a development. And again, it's hard not to have some absolute sympathy for them on this here. But their solution is, unfortunately, I think it's the wrong solution, and that's they want an expansion, an extension of their very generous tax break for them, so they basically don't pay anything except a baseline in property taxes, and they want that to be extended for another decade or so. And as much as in this rare instance, I have a great deal of sympathy and understanding for their plight, I think this is the wrong solution. We need more cops in Kansas City, and while that might not direct to the abatement directly, the solution here is arresting and convicting and imprisoning the people doing these crimes, and to allow some developers to have these sort of tax-exempt islands, which they'll then use to augment with private security. As much as you understand the request, that's not part of the solution here. The best way to fund the police and prosecutors necessary to address this in Kansas City is through property taxes.
Yeah.
Far better than earnings taxes. And to have a broad property tax base helping to solve these problems for everyone is the way to go about it, not sort of islands of tax exemption here and there. I understand what they're going through, and I even understand the request, which I rarely do, but I still don't think it's the right solution.
Well, what this comes down to is a failure of the city to keep its citizens and businesses safe, and we've talked plenty about that on this show. And now it potentially could hurt them monetarily as well if they extend this tax abatement for the Grand Apartment Complex. So you want the city to basically turn down the opportunity, but the city also has to acknowledge why the ask is being made, right?
Absolutely. So much. And look, I cover local government for the Show Me Institute around the state of Missouri. And as much as I want to talk about regulations and changes to permitting processes and regulations and lower taxes and broader taxes. So much of this just comes down to our cities need to be more safe for citizens, whether it's Kansas City or Springfield or St. Louis or anywhere. I mean, the crime is the thing making it impossible to really turn our cities around and make them the great places that they can be is crime rates. And most frustrating of all is that the police know who the bad actors are in most of these instances. Yet around the country and in Missouri, we just have we're electing people who refuse to allow the police to arrest, convict, and imprison the small number of really bad people doing the vast amount of harm in our cities and in Kansas City. And yeah, the city has failed this development and many other developments, and more importantly, many people. What is a development if not a group of people? The people, by not keeping that city safe. And again, I almost never look at developer requests for subsidies and sympathize with them and understand where they're coming from, but I certainly do in this case. I still don't think their requested solution is the right one, but it's impossible not to see the bind that they're in.
Yeah, and this is at 12th and Grand, so it's right next to the parking lot where there was that shooting a few weeks back that killed a couple of people. So, that is right next to T-Mobile Center as well. So it's right there in the heart of downtown. And they're having all these issues. And if you can't keep that part of town safe, well, we know what's going on in the rest of Kansas City as well, sad to say. So this is an interesting story, David. I'm glad that you guys are on it, and we'll of course, keep talking about it here on KCMO. I want to add...
Let me expand a little bit. Like, there's this desire to have the Royals move downtown and put a new baseball stadium downtown. Look, if people don't feel safe going to it, if, let's say, a couple of years from now the Royals have actually moved downtown, hopefully on their own dime, not the taxpayers, but if people don't feel safe, they're not going to go to the games. You're seeing that in St. Louis right now, where Cardinals attendance is plummeting, and fear of crime is likely one of those reasons.
Well, I thought the Cardinals just blow at baseball. I thought that was the problem.
Well, it does. That is the problem. The team has gotten terrible the last couple of years, but there's also some people who are just afraid to go downtown, and that's because the crime in St. Louis is so out of control.
Yeah, I guess people will take a chance for a team winning 100 games a year. They might risk their lives for that, but they ain't risking their lives for a set.
Right. It's painful to say.
All right. Fair enough. David Stokes is here on KCMO. What is going on in Lee's Summit? I know you guys are all over this story at the Show Me Institute. Lee's Summit is planning to appeal a judge's decision blocking a tax at a Hy-Vee store. What is going on there between the city of Lee's Summit and a Hy-Vee?
Well, first of all, good for Hy-Vee for pushing back and opposing this Community Improvement District, or SID as they're called, in the Oldham Village development there. It's really awful what Lee's Summit did. As the developer of this Oldham Village and working hand in glove with the city, they wanted to impose this Community Improvement District, and they went out of their way to target Hy-Vee with the tax. Look, the grocery business is a tough business. 1% more on your groceries is a lot for a lot of people. And Hy-Vee didn't want to be included in this Community Improvement District. And Hy-Vee was only targeted by the developer in Lee's Summit, not because this SID was going to do anything to Hy-Vee, but because, like grocery stores everywhere, they generate a lot of money. So they were going to get a lot of taxes from the Hy-Vee that they could spend elsewhere for this development, for this corporate welfare, for other businesses in the area. And Hy-Vee said, no, we don't want to be in on this. This is going to hurt our business, hurt our customers, that we have to charge more for no legitimate purpose. So good for Hy-Vee for pushing back, and good for this judge's decision to say this is wrong, and Lee's Summit and the developer have no right to compel Hy-Vee to be in this SID against their will. So I love seeing this. It's great to finally see businesses pushing back against it. There's been a few other examples of grocery stores pushing back from these special taxing districts in Missouri because they are targeted. They generate so much retail sales that they generate a lot of taxes. Mm-hmm. So cities and developers target them to spend their money elsewhere. So Lee's Summit is unfortunately appealing. I very much hope they lose on appeal. It's terrible what the city of Lee's Summit and the developer here are doing, and good for Hy-Vee for saying enough.
Awesome. I love that. David Stokes with the Show Me Institute. Great job there, David. We appreciate you, my man.
We have a lot about TIDs and TDDs and other special taxing districts and some writings on this particular instance at showmeinstitute.org, and always enjoy the opportunity to talk with you, Pete.
David C. Stokes on KCMO. There you go. 844. That's a good job by Hy-Vee, fighting back on that. I love it. And this was just put up on the text line. It's an interesting point. Hold on, I lost it. There's too many texts coming in. Okay, here we go. Pete, regarding the apartments at 12th and Grand who want an extension of their tax break because of the crime downtown. This texter says, could this be a turning point for KCMO? Instead of developers going to the city for tax breaks to build more apartment complexes, they may learn that they need to go to the city to demand that they serve and protect the citizens. It's a great point. You know, here's the problem. The developers don't really care about the well-being of these communities because they operate in multiple cities around the country. They're a business worried about the bottom line. Yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world, they would have somebody on the ground in each city caring about the fact that, the crime rates are out of control. But in the end, do they have the bandwidth and time to do it? Probably not. What they can do, what they know how to do, is apply for a tax break to basically help them and their business achieve their financial goals. That is a lot easier than being like, wait, we've got loser politicians running these cities and they don't have a jail and they haven't had one in 10 years. Maybe we should get involved in some of these city council races, and maybe we should get involved in what's going on with the county prosecutor. That's a lot of work. These are oftentimes national companies. They don't have time for that. They don't really care all that much. They just want to get theirs. And that's why I appreciate the text. In a perfect world, I would agree, but I wouldn't hold your breath on that one. What If Wednesday is coming up? 3 questions as we roll till 9 o'clock. And then Eric Schmitt, Missouri U.S. Senator, will be here just after 9. The latest on the shutdown and his recent visit to Kansas City, all coming up.
From Gladstone to Gardner, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
8:51 on a Wednesday morning in Kansas City, and it is that time of the week. Let's go.
95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. It's time for What If Wednesday.
What if, instead of having you on this radio station, there was somebody else?
Has not worked out well. Let's go there, John Anthony. 3 questions, my man. What's on your rundown?
What if a group of Republicans were guilty of inflammatory rhetoric?
Then we'd call them out. We'd say they should lose any positions of note that they have, and it would be not difficult to do. Oh, you mean that's what people have done over the last 12 hours? Huh.
Seemingly.
Yeah. If you didn't see this, big investigation by Politico.
They've all got it. It's on Axios, too, right?
Oh, well, Politico did the investigation.
They did the work.
Yeah, they did the work. So the Kansas Young Republicans organization was deactivated yesterday after an investigation by Politico into a trove of racist and derogatory messages exchanged in a group chat between young GOP members in 4 states, including Kansas. And what happened to the Kansas folks involved? Well, Vice Chair William Hendricks, who worked as a spokesperson for Attorney General Chris Kobach, was fired last week. And then Chair Alex Dwyer, also in this group, he basically got the boot. He was in charge of the Kansas Young Republicans, and they have become inactive. They have been shut down, and obviously he is no longer in charge of that operation. That came immediately yesterday from the Kansas GOP. That's how you handle people who say or do hateful things. You condemn it, you strip their power, and let's be honest, these are not people that, I barely know the names. And I'm not like super in tune with the day-to-day of the local political scene. I know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know these people. So they're really nobodies. They didn't have any real political clout, but still, they shouldn't be in any position of power. They shouldn't be a spokesperson for Kobach or anything like that. So Chris fired him. Good for him. That's what he should do. All right? It's not hard to do, though. Meantime, we have this Virginia Attorney General candidate who has text messages talking about the death of his political opponents and his political opponent's wife and kids. And what do you get over there right now? Not a peep. Not much. No one of note's calling for him to be, removed from the ballot. Meantime, Chuck Schumer was outraged by a couple of goobers from Kansas who no one even knows here locally, writing some hateful things in a text message thread, which, gross, no doubt about it. But Chuck Schumer's posted more about that in the last day than he has anything with someone in his own party who actually is running for elected office, running to be one of the 50 most powerful attorneys in the nation as the AG in Virginia. Won't say a peep. But he's worried about a couple of losers in Kansas. Unbelievable, John. What's
next?
Could
have just texted YB. Yeah, but.
Yes, exactly. Right. Boy, they are great at that game, aren't they?
What if Kansas City was as concerned about protecting its own citizens as it seems to be for tourists who are coming for the World Cup next year?
Well, then they wouldn't have this conversation going on this week about whether or not they should start building a temporary jail for the World Cup. That is going to be on the docket tomorrow at City Hall. And it's like, guys, if it's imperative to have a temporary jail, and I know you're going to build a permanent jail, but that's going to take until 2029. How many bodies are going to be piled up by then because of, the lack of a jail? Why not just make the temporary jail temporary for the next 4 years instead of having a temporary jail in place for like the 2 months of the World Cup? If it's that valuable to have a jail setting during the World Cup couple of months in Kansas City, then you know what? Figure out how to spend the money to keep that temporary jail open. Because suddenly you're going to have a bunch of people on the city council who a couple of years ago were all against the cops, against the idea of having jails, now vote for this thing, which is going to be proof that actually at its core they believe that having a jail space is beneficial to a community. But only when we're on the world stage with the World Cup and have tourists here. When all those tourists leave, and it's back to just regular Kansas City residents, we don't really need that jail thing. We'll be fine, John.
Well, yeah, because the new temporary jail will be hooked up for cable to show the games, right? Because it's cruel and unusual punishment to jail someone and not let them see the team. So we can't afford to keep the subscription going past that.
Oh, that's
Last one for you today, sir. What if redistricting is coming to Kansas?
Well, I think it's actually going to get hotter than it did in Missouri. Missouri did its redistricting in the last, few weeks, and it actually just kind of happened. And yeah, Cleaver threw a fit. There's no doubt about it.
You mustard moo.
But there wasn't a lot that came out of it. There was not a lot of backlash because it happened so quickly. My fear on the Kansas side is that it's just going to take more time. Obviously, you would have to vote it through and override a veto from Governor Kelly. She's not going to approve redistricting where Sharice Davids would likely lose her seat. So you'd have to have the votes there to override Laura Kelly's veto. I think there will be way more blowback on the Kansas side because of Johnson County than there would be on the Missouri side, or there was on the Missouri side. And that could make it, I guess, more entertaining from our perspective. But let's be clear. It would be gerrymandering just like it was in Missouri. But, if you weren't complaining about blue states gerrymandering over the last several years and couple of decades, I don't know how you can really throw a fit over what Missouri did and what Kansas may do. I'm also not convinced they've got the votes to do it in Kansas anyway. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Coming up, Eric Schmitt, Missouri U.S. Senator. Where is the shutdown at, and what was he doing in Kansas City the last couple of days? All coming up next. Well, he's got some time on his hands since, government shutdown. And he decided he'd spend a couple of days in Kansas City. We always appreciate him for that. He is Eric Schmitt, Missouri U.S. Senator, joining us now on KCMO. We'll get to your visit here to Kansas City in a moment, Senator, but I do want to ask you as we start off the morning here, where are we at now with the shutdown hitting, day 15?
Well, I'm back in Washington. I had to leave Kansas City a little early for the vote last night, but it's like Groundhog Day is the best way I could describe it. We put on the floor again another clean CR, basically to continue the current level of spending to give us 6 or 7 weeks to finish up the appropriations bills. The Democrats are blocking that. And I think there's a lot of misinformation, especially from the failed Kansas City Star, about what's going on here. I mean, their counteroffer right now, Pete, is not the clean CR, but $1.5 trillion in new spending, that undo all the prohibitions we had on illegal immigrants and non-citizens getting health care benefits. They want to restore all the rescissions. So Guatemalan sex change operations, DEI in Burma, Sesame Street in Iraq, they want all that back in. It's ridiculous. It's unserious. They're just upset that Trump won and we've been able to execute his agenda. But when you get into a government shutdown, typically the exit ramp, Pete, is a clean CR, which is exactly where we're at right now. So you see the media trying to twist and turn like this is some sort of both sides thing. The Democrats, we need 5 more Democrats. There's a few of them who voted with Republicans, so technically it's bipartisan effort to fund the government. We need 5 more to come along. I don't know that they'll do it because I'm not sure how much this actually has to do with policy. I think this is more of a psychosis. It's pathological at this point from Senate Democrats, and on the left, it's Trump derangement syndrome. There's this No Kings rally in places, especially in Washington this Saturday. I think they want to look like they're fighting Trump, even if it makes no sense and hurts the American people. So they're way more interested, Pete, in grandstanding than governing, and that's kind of where we're at.
So, of course, it is payday as well for millions of Americans, and it seemed like they were trying to hold that issue over the head of the Republican Party, in particular with paying our military. So you've got plenty of constituents, obviously, in this state who are workers for the military in different branches. Where is that at right now?
Yeah, President Trump has said that with the dollars that are remaining, eventually we're going to run out of money, right? That military members are going to get paid. I think they're going to prioritize law enforcement. He's actually made efforts for women, infant, and children, the single mom, poor single moms, that their WIC cards will still work. But, you're getting, once you get probably into next week, you're getting into territory where it gets really tough. So I think those are the priorities. So military members are going to get paid. But this isn't rocket science. Like, literally, the governments the Republicans 8 times have voted to avoid all this and fund the government. The Democrats are trying to interject these partisan issues and hold government funding hostage. That's never been sort of the way you go about doing this, but that's where they're at. And again, you've got media outlets like the failed Kansas City Star continue to try to give cover to these Democrats. If the shoe were on the other foot, Pete, Republicans would be roasted for this. Like they have been. They'd be roasted for it, but when it's the Democrats and they're all kind of on the same team, it's a different story.
Yeah, it's certainly how it seems like this thing is playing out. So do you have any optimism that after the No Kings rally, Chuck Schumer is willing to actually get down to business? Or, with each passing day, do you say, I'm not so sure about that?
Yeah, that's the hope. But none of this is really rational. That's the problem. It's not really there's no real plan other than Chuck Schumer, for example, and the Democrats voted for this exact same thing 5 months ago. Okay? The problem is when they did, they got torched by the radical left. And Chuck Schumer is really here in the footsteps of AOC. That's what this really is about, at least for him and a lot of Democrats, is that they know that if they do what they should do, which is to govern here, that it creates an opening on the left for primaries and for them to be, destroyed by these nonprofits that lit them up last time.
Mm-hmm. Eric Schmitt, Missouri U.S. Senator, joining us on KCMO. Senator, you were in Kansas City earlier this week. I know you were up there at the Fraternal Order of Police headquarters. So you well know the crime issue that we are dealing with in Kansas City. What was the purpose of that visit?
Yeah, to check in with the law enforcement men and women of Kansas City, who I've had a relationship going back to my AG days and even before that, just to see how things are going. And, some good news. Recruitment numbers are up. That's a good thing. I think the fevers broke to some degree on the 2020 rioting and the Black Lives Matter stuff. I think the American people, part of what the election about, I think last November is people rejected all this defund the police nonsense. I mean, Kansas City had to deal with it specifically when the budget was dropped from 25% to 20%. And then that, took a constitutional amendment to fix that. But the truth of the matter is violent crime is still a problem. And so we want to be helpful. We want to make sure they have the resources they need. But just to put in context, Pete, how crazy the Democrats are in this thing. Last week, I tried on bipartisan police funding bills to make sure they have better equipment, that they get the mental health that they need. More police officers die by suicide every year than in the line of duty. The Democrats blocked it. They blocked it because they don't want to see anything move forward by way of achievement when President Trump's in office. Now, that doesn't get reported a lot, but we asked for these bipartisan bills to move forward last week. Cory Booker and others, they blocked it on the Senate floor. So, again, we're just in a weird place, but I'm going to continue to do everything I can with them, whether it's grant funding or just knowing that they've got the support of their elected officials for the tough work that they have to do every day.
How about the National Guard? We know they're now down to our south of Memphis. There's conversations about maybe that coming up to Missouri. I know St. Louis has gotten more attention than Kansas City, but Kansas City certainly has been on a historically bad run when it comes to violent crime. Have you had any direct conversations with the White House on either major city in Missouri being part of that next for the National Guard?
Not for the National Guard, but I have talked to Pam Bondi and to Kash Patel about making sure there are other federal law enforcement officials that can make their way to St. Louis and Kansas City. St. Louis is getting a large permanent infusion of FBI agents specifically to work on violent crime. I think that's a good thing for Kansas City, too. So what we're trying to do is have the resources necessary for these sort of interagency operations that aren't just surges. Those are important, too, to take the really bad folks off the street at any one particular time, but also have a larger permanent presence. I think that can matter. So those are some of the things that I'm working on kind of behind the scenes. But all options are on the table. But I've not had any direct communication about the National Guard specifically. So
what else? I know you were here for 2 days. So what else was on your agenda in Kansas City?
Well, we
Eric
had a
Schmitt?
book signing. We had a book signing too, Pete, on Monday night. I think I was on your show when the book came out. The Last Line of Defense: How to Beat the Left in Court. It's a New York Times bestseller. So we had a lot of folks who wanted to read the book or had read the book. So we did that, and then we also visited some technology leaders in Kansas City too, to talk about what AI looks like, what kind of infrastructure we're going to need. We're going to need a lot of energy for that. There's no reason in the world why Missouri, Kansas City specifically, can't be a leader in making sure we have the bandwidth to be real innovators in this country. And we're in this real competition with China. I'm on the Armed Services Committee and also on the Commerce Committee. So you see the military application and also the commercial application. Everything for China is dual use, and they're not messing around. I mean, they feel like the last 150 years has been some great humiliation. They think they're the Middle Kingdom. They're playing for real in space. If they get to quantum computing before we do, that's a real problem. If they have a better AI stack than we do, that's a problem. So we want to make sure America is the leader, and I think there's a lot of assets, a lot of resources, and a great workforce here in Missouri to help go do that. So one of the things that I do when people come into the office and they talk about all these great ideas they have, whether it's on the military side or on the commercial side, I ask them, what's your presence in Missouri? And let me tell you about the great things going on in Kansas City and other places. So just hearing from them and what their needs are and what they're seeing, especially as it relates to workforce, I think is important to do.
Last thing for you, Senator Schmitt, with the historic peace deal this week signed by the president between Israel and Gaza, how much of that is part of the larger equation and puzzle of, first off, getting the Middle East away from China, and also then as a result potentially ending the Russia-Ukraine war if you can decouple Putin from Xi? How much do you think this all fits together, and can President Trump pull that off?
Yeah, I think what's happening, Pete, and history will look back with greater context. What President Trump has embarked in, really for 10 years, but specifically now in these first 9 months, is a rebirth of American realism, which is to say that you take the world as it is, not how you want it to be, in the sense that you're not going to force the pride flag to be waved in Afghanistan, right? This sort of cultural globalization that America was contributing to in the last term, but sort of this is the world. we want to use diplomacy first. We also understand what are our core national interests. We're going to protect the homeland first and understand that China's the real threat. So what does that mean? It means now that Europe is going to be contributing 5% to their national defense. They've never done that before. So President Trump, we have to be able to pivot, not abandon Europe, but they have to stand up on their own 2 feet more. So all these things are happening at once. Europe's doing that. There's got to be more of a focus on China, the Golden Dome and things like that, protecting the homeland are part of this, but also where the United States can have a leadership role in the world, like being the arbiter of this horrific war in the Middle East, getting hostages freed, trying to have peace there. That's an appropriate place for a strong president. What we saw the last 4 years was a weak president. The Afghanistan withdrawal sort of was a cascading impact. America wasn't respected on the world stage. America is respected on the world stage. And it's not just, with Israel and Gaza, Azerbaijan and Armenia, India and Pakistan. America's really stepping up to play that role, but not in a way where we're trying to force regime change or have troops on the ground all over the world in a sort of post-Cold War globalist view. That's not President Trump's view, but he's being very strategic here. He's respected and he's winning. And I think that he's cementing his status as the peace president. That's for sure.
There you go. Senator Eric Schmitt, great to have you on. Thanks for the time. And always welcome back in Kansas City. It was great to have you here this week. Thanks so much.
All right, partner. Take care.
There you go. Eric Schmitt on 95.7 FM. Great to have him on the show as always. And yes, his book, doing very well. The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. I got to get my signed copy. Jeez, I feel like I got shortchanged here. I need that signed copy. Between him and Bill O'Reilly, we just know bestsellers all over the place. O'Reilly will be on the show coming up on Friday. He was yesterday at the White House. I saw this with Tucker Carlson, Glenn Beck, and Jesse Waters. If you didn't see that, it was quite a lineup of folks who were there to commemorate Charlie Kirk, who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And if you did not hear Erika Kirk, oh my goodness, every time I hear her, I become more impressed by her strength. And I will share some of what she had to say and what's coming out of Charlie Kirk's legacy as well. A new study on the explosion of Christianity next.
On Wednesday's Guy Benson Show, Congresswoman Ashley Hinson of Iowa, she's running for Senate in the Hawkeye State. She will join us on day 15, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
I warned you. I try to give you a good tease throughout the morning whenever I can going into a break, but I did my last tease to warn you that Erika Kirk is going to make you emotional when you hear her talk about her two young children yesterday at the White House when her late husband, Charlie Kirk, was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The way that she spoke about her 3-year-old daughter and her 16-month-old son will make you, if you are a parent or a grandparent or anybody who has cared for young children, aunt, uncle, whatever it might be, this one's going to move you.
And before I close, I'll share with you that I asked our daughter what she would like to say to Daddy for his birthday. Excuse me. She said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal. I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream, and I want you to go have a birthday surprise. I love you," is what she said. And while our son is precious, he can't yet speak, in classic Kirk family fashion, his actions spoke louder than his words, and his gift to you, Charlie, and myself for that matter, was deciding to become the man of the house and be fully potty trained at 16 months.
That's a heck of a gift, by the way. My youngest is 19 months, and we haven't really thought about it, but that is darn impressive. But on a serious note, Erika Kirk continues to showcase her incredible strength, her wisdom, her ability to navigate the unthinkable in a way that most people just simply couldn't. And I'll include myself in that. We have not seen her on that kind of a stage since Charlie's memorial service going back about 3 weeks ago now. But she was once again on display yesterday and making Charlie very proud from the White House. But also it was a human moment to remind ourselves that what was taken away was a husband and a father and a son. And for too many, it's still just the guy I disagreed with politically. No, a husband, a father of 2 little kids, and a son. Charlie's parents, who have kept a very low profile, were both there yesterday as well. And there's something going on in this country, I'm telling you. And I think Charlie Kirk's assassination may have expedited this. Take a listen to this report this morning from Fox and Friends on what's happening in America over the last couple of years.
A Christian revival across the country. Bible sales increasing over 40% since 2022. Religion app downloads surging nearly 80%. That increase since 2019. And Christian music Spotify streams up 50% from 2019.
That's not a mistake. There's a massive cultural shift happening. It has been happening for years. I think that Charlie's assassination may just take that and put it on steroids when we look back at this moment in time and this moment in American history. And it ties into what we were talking about last hour. The study that came out of KU that CBS News reported that more than 400,000 women have left the U.S. workforce in the first half of 2025, the steepest decline in more than 40 years for mothers of young children. I think there's a revival, there's an awakening, there's a new acknowledgement as to what really matters and the things that are truly important in life. And that's tying it back in large part to faith and family. And I believe we're going to look back on some of these numbers, and they are just going to continue to skyrocket. And Charlie Kirk's story and his death is going to be a part of that as well. Coming up, we'll get to our caller of the day on one of the most controversial things that I've seen happen at a local school level here in Kansas City in quite some time. And we got some great calls on it. It was hard to pick the winner. We'll share that winner coming up next.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
It's the time of the morning when we share our caller of the day. And this morning it ties into a story that got a lot of us fired up, and that is out of Blue Valley Schools. So what happened at Blue Valley Schools this week is that a teacher, Barb Hart, been there for 25 years, got fired. Why did Barb get fired by the school board? Because they claim she violated the school's policy on emergency safety interventions. She was called to the hallway to help with a special needs child. After attempts to de-escalate failed, the child was having a meltdown in the hallway. Barb gets called in. Barb picks up the student and transports the student to the safe space in her classroom. Well, the school said that violated policy, which says restraint can only be used when less restrictive alternatives were determined to be inappropriate or ineffective, and when a student's behavior presents an immediate physical danger to themselves or others. This got Barb Hart fired by the Blue Valley School Board by a 6-1 vote. Only Jim McMullen, who I talked to this morning briefly via text, voted to keep Barb Hart, or at least not fire her. He told Fox 4, "My perspective is to extend grace to a teacher who has given 25 years to the district and recognize that some situations involve judgment calls." The problem with these bureaucracies, the problem with these school boards, it seems like these days, is that judgment and common sense is no longer part of the equation. Here's how it sounded last night on Fox 4 as many teachers, or I should say many parents, were upset with the decision to fire teacher Barb Hart.
The policy for this Blue Valley is to not touch the child and just let them kind of flounder, where she gave dignity to that child, scooped him up, got him into a safe space so that they weren't on display for everybody else to see.
An addendum to Monday's agenda said Hart would be fired for violating policy 3522. It says district personnel may use seclusion and or physical restraint only when less restrictive alternatives are determined by a school employee to be inappropriate or ineffective, and when a student's behavior presents an immediate danger to self or others.
The child is scared. They are looking for a trusted adult to guide them and to sometimes make decisions that ensure their well-being. If compassionate responses to these mental needs are punishable under policy 3522, then the system is failing both our teachers and our students.
That's exactly right from that mom there at the Blue Valley School Board meeting this week. Audio courtesy of Fox 4. You will have now teachers that already have been operating in fear, literally being paralyzed by it. It's not good for the kids. It's not good for the education system. All of this is fine for the bureaucrats, fine for the administrators, and great for the lawyers. Absolutely outstanding for them. They continue to have the upper hand. But for the people it's intended to help, it's a loser. And here's our caller of the day.
It's the Mundo in the Morning caller of the day on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Amy is in Lansing. Go ahead, Amy. You're on KCMO.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a school board member here in Lansing, and this is a problem that is out of control in all districts right now. We have teachers that have even came to our board wanting to speak to us during a board meeting about the safety issues, not just for other students, but for themselves. And our current board even denied them speaking to the board because of this. And we need to stop firing our teachers for using common sense and de-escalating and taking control of situations just because administration is more worried about being sued than protecting the kids and the environment. We've had so many disruptions. Kindergartners where almost their whole year have been disrupted because of one student, because they're too afraid to remove them from the classroom, just like this teacher did, and instead will leave them screaming in the halls, crying in the halls, disrupting a class for an hour on end, and all because of that one little statement, the least restrictive, environment, when there is proper training on how to do this. And she should absolutely not have been fired. This is wrong, and it's going to affect teachers and students until people start standing up to this. And I'm ashamed that board did that to her.
Amy in Lansing, our caller of the day on KCMO. I'm embarrassed for the Blue Valley School Board as well. They screwed this one up, but they operated like I think many other school boards in the Kansas City Metro would operate in the same situation. And that goes to show you, I mean, you've got administrators with way too much power trying to protect themselves. You've got school boards who are happy to do the bidding of the administrators at the very top. That's something that was brought up to me privately this morning in terms of how Blue Valley operates, which is a darn shame. And now you've got a 25-year teacher out of work because she did the right thing. Let's be clear. If you have kids who throw tantrums, whether they're special needs or not, sometimes removing them from a situation is the only thing and the best thing you can do. Resets their body, resets their little brain. Standing in a hallway with loud noises and kids and commotion around them is sometimes the worst place they can be, especially when you talk about a special needs kid. And that ends up now getting you fired, John.
We've got to do something to alleviate that fear of being sued. In this case, we have the parents of the student approving of the action. That should be the final word. No group from Colorado deciding that they need to act on, or some parent who's triggered. It wasn't their kid. They don't even have a kid in the school. We've got to have something, and I would think that if the involved parties agree to the actions that came to pass, that should be the end of it.
Well, there needs to be, I agree, and tort reform needs to happen.
Yeah.
All across the country, including in our two states. It is completely
Bigger
out of
picture,
control.
for sure.
That's part of the bigger picture, tort reform. But the problem is the attorneys have so much power and control over the politicians in the state capitals through their lobbyists. It's never going to happen. I mean, Missouri's a mess right now. I know we're talking about Kansas with Blue Valley. This is, once again, an offshoot of the conversation and a bigger picture conversation. But you want to talk about why costs keep going up? One of the reasons? These major companies are spending money on lawsuits left and right to settle things. Everyone's getting sued. Everybody. Now back to Blue Valley, you have that fear for these school districts as well. But the difference here is you have the parents backing up the teacher, which is great. The parents backing up the teacher. And you wonder why these public schools have become such utter failures. It's not because of the teachers in the classrooms by and large. Yeah, there's some wackos and, we expose them when we can. But it's not, generally speaking, the teacher in the classroom. It's not the kids. The parents can always do a better job. But when you have built a system that has become a jobs program for adults at the administrative level, that's where the money is, that's where the power is, and that's where people want to go. It attracts bad people to the job. And the system is no longer about just teaching the kids, getting them ready for the next level in life, and then sending them off to the real world. It is bureaucratic bloat from the top on down. And these boards, yes, are largely filled with people of one political ideology on the left, but I don't even know how that ties into this story. I don't know how this is a left versus right thing. I do know that the guy that voted to keep the teacher, Jim McMullen, is like the only right-of-center guy on the Blue Valley School Board. I do know that, but I don't get how this is right or left. This is just common sense. If you're a parent or a grandparent, I don't see how you could be in favor of this firing. Carl, Independence, go ahead.
Hi, Pete. I have associations that I can't name, but what happens to people, the staff in schools from the children is absolutely frightening. I know of one teacher who had been decades of service. There was a line of kindergartners. One little kid was dawdling. And she said, "Come on, dawdler, let's go." She took both hands, kind of pushed him along on the rump, and the parents were all up in arms. "You assaulted my little baby." They transferred the teacher somewhere to basically preserve her job. And I know of the people that serve in the quiet room where they send the kids when they're just out of control. One lady, I offered to make her greaves, which are metal guards from like ancient Greece, because she'd been kicked in the shins so many times. These children, they've had to rip off their clothes and scream and yell in the windows and stuff. What the parents unleash onto the school is absolutely appalling.
And where's you know what, the one time you'd say it'd be good to have a union around, where's the union when you need them?
That's a good question. I've asked that many a time myself, verbatim.
Thanks, Carl. See you, buddy. I appreciate it. 9:45 on KCMO Talk Radio. That right there, you're right. The school boards have gotten wacky. On the text line, we've got this at 913-408-7957. Pete, my wife is a first-grade teacher for the last 27 years. She was in a similar situation all of last year. The district took the entire year to try to work out a deal with the parents. It's an epidemic of embarrassing nature. They're all woke, but those of us on the other side don't get involved enough in the school board. The left has taken over, and it's our fault. There was a moment in 2021 when conservatives cared about school board elections here in Kansas in particular, and like everything else, it quickly went away. People stopped caring. But I just keep thinking back to, even if you're a liberal and you disagree with me or you disagree with your neighbor on tax rates and foreign policy and, abortion and all these different things, how do you defend this teacher being fired? That's what I keep coming back to. I don't understand how, even if you disagree on all the major issues in the world, you agree with this teacher, Barb Hart, being fired at Blue Valley. I can't figure it out. But what had me in a good mood this morning is when I saw this video. People laughing at the insanity of one of the most popular authors in the world standing up to the madness, and fellow very popular actresses standing up to the madness. Now, we'll share this with you to wrap up the show coming up next before Kevin Keatsman uncanceled at 10 o'clock.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, we're doing this at the end of the show for the rest of the week, and that is giving you tickets to what you've been hearing about throughout the morning here. One of the many things you've been hearing about throughout the morning here on KCMO, and that is tickets to Stiller and Miera, Nothing is Lost, in select AMC theaters on October 20th. If you want to go, text the keyword LOST to 913-408-7957 for your chance to win a pair of tickets. This is Ben Stiller's documentary chronicling his parents and their heyday in the 1960s and 1970s. So once again, text the keyword LOST to 913-408-7957.
Love Jerry Meara as Costanza's dad in Seinfeld.
Yes.
Great stuff. Put them together. It's too bad Ann Meara wasn't actually Costanza's mother in that, but Doris, what's her name, did a good job too.
Well, you know what? That's your thing. Sounds like you might be trying to text to win, John, but you can't win. That's the problem. But I know this will be big for some in the audience. So LOST to 913-408-7957. Wrap up the show here. We've got a few minutes left before Keith's Been Uncanceled takes over, coming up on KCMO. So J.K. Rowling, of course, the author of all the Harry Potter books, has made a great name for herself. God bless her for standing up to the trans insanity. And she's gotten quite a bit of blowback.
Yeah, from people in the movies.
I know. I mean, she is more or less blackballed from Hollywood. But, listen, the reality is the Harry Potter series and the Harry Potter name still carries a lot of weight. And she's able to obviously do very well with that. But Keira Knightley is going to be involved in one of the upcoming Harry Potter deals that's going to be happening. And she was asked about joining the controversial J.K. Rowling and if she knew about boycotts going on around J.K. Rowling. And here is what Keira Knightley had to say.
I saw you're voicing Professor Umbridge in the new Harry Potter audiobooks. I was wondering, are you aware that some fans are calling for a boycott, given J.K. Rowling's ongoing campaign against trans people?
I was not aware of that, no. I'm very sorry. I think we're all living in a period of time right now where we're all going to have to figure out how to live together, aren't we? And we've all got very different opinions. So I hope that we can all find respect.
Good for her. I love her laugh there, too. No, I didn't know people were trying to boycott J.K. Rowling. Sorry, I'm still going to work and do the full cast audiobook that I was asked to do. And if you don't like it, too bad. That's basically what Keira Knightley just said there. And good for her. That's outstanding. Because just a few years ago, there would have been some chump of a manager or agent who would have said, if you get asked about JK, here's what you got to say. I love trans people. They're the best thing that ever happened. And
mention these 3 words.
Yes, exactly. There would have been a whole script from the agents, from the managers, from the business people. And now Keira Knightley basically laughed at the question and said, not aware of it. I'm sorry. And then said, we should just respect everybody. Not a difficult thing to say.
Well, more to the point, she said, I got a life.
Yeah.
I'm busy.
Yeah. I don't know who's trying to cancel who today.
Yeah.
Okay? Because everyone's trying to cancel somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about cancel culture. There always has to be somebody next or it can't survive. It's the same thing with race hustling from guys like Al Sharpton. You can't ever solve it because if you solve it, the hucksters are out of work. They don't have a job. They don't have a mission. So that's why I think we got to this moment during Barack Obama's term where it's like, wait, race relations are really good. We've just elected the first ever black president. Oh, my goodness, things are going really well, and we might be in a post-racial America or trending towards it. And then all these guys, I think, along with Barack Obama, starting his second term, was like, hold my beer. We'll take care of this. And what have you seen for the last 10 plus years? Race relations actually getting worse. The more they bring up race, the worse race relations get. The data is clear as day. But you know what? For people like that who actually want to divide us, it's good for business. And that's what this is always sadly about. What is good for business. What's good for our business is you hanging on for another few minutes, listening to Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled, as I know each of you do every single day here on KCMO. And then it is the Vince Show at 11 o'clock. Have a great Wednesday. We're back tomorrow morning at 6.